Good evening and welcome to this episode 18 of the South African Equestrian Federation's podcast From the Horse's Mouth. Tonight, our great pleasure to be interviewing somebody who is flying the South African flag high in Europe as a show jumper and international competitor and trainer. It is none other than Oliver Lazarus, having hailed from South Africa originally and being based in Europe now for the last 18 years, but having traveled there since the age of 12, I believe, Oliver. Let's hand over to Oliver to tell us about what it takes to shine on the big stage overseas and the welfare efforts that he is still involved with back home. Oliver, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I'm devastated that we missed you on your last trip to South Africa. I believe you said you flew home on Sunday.
Yeah, it was a quick one. I just needed a little regroup, bit of sun, warm weather, touch base, family, friends, and a few glasses of wine too.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, we can always send some over for you, Oliver. Oliver, where are you based at the moment?
I'm based in Valkenswaard, so South Netherlands. Been here since 2017. So 6 years now. This will be 6 years.
And are those your own stables that you own and run under your label, basically?
Yeah. So under our company, Team Equest, so me and my wife, we run the stables here. We have 27 boxes, indoor, apartments. So we offer a sort of full turnkey sort of structure. So if someone wants to come in here, it's not easy always in Europe if you don't know the way things work. You don't have an accountant or a secretary to do the bookings, or to rent apartments and that. So we can sort of do everything for you, from the apartments to your paperwork, stabling, and the best of everything for the horses, from the ground, paddocks, stables. Yeah. So we sort of offer everything.
That's a really nice offering for people to be able to come over and take advantage of that. Is it specifically targeted at South Africans, or is it for people from around the world?
No, there's no target. It's for anyone. I mean, we have now quite an international sort of crew at the moment. We have a Swedish rider, Wilma Hellström, who just qualified for the World Cup finals. We have Karina Johan Peter, who's Brazilian, and Alexander Thornton, so a British rider. So it's pretty international.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, Oliver, you technically shouldn't need any introduction, but for the benefits of the people who are dialing in, who are maybe endurance riders and tent peggers, and we've got quite a disciplined variety in the South African Equestrian Federation, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your career highlights are, your elevator speech, quickly.
Okay, let's go. I guess I've represented South Africa through ponies, juniors, senior colours. Did my first Senior Nations Cup in Lisbon when they're 18 years old. Done 3 World Championships. I've pretty much competed on every major league around the world. I've competed in the States, in Asia. I've done World Cups. I've jumped on the Global Champions League. I've jumped on, used to be Nations Cup Super Leagues, now it's Longines Super Leagues. From everything from 1-star to 5-star, young horses, national shows, Bundes championships, clinics. I've done clinics all around the world, from California to Australia to Asia again. So I've had quite a varied career.
Varied and profound career. I mean, that's quite impressive.
Yeah.
You said you started traveling overseas when you were 12. How did that come about?
Yeah. So I was very lucky. I mean, to progress through the pony ranks, my mom made me do all sorts of disciplines. So I've done showing, eventing, equitation. She said it was good for the ring craft and the understanding of all
she was
disciplines,
right.
which
yeah,
she was probably right. Don't tell her that. And then I got Trevor Lovegreen took me over on a pony team when I was 11 to Scotland. So that was the sort of first big break. Came back and he phoned me up. He said, "There's an Olympic British show jumper coming to a clinic. You've got to get up to Joburg." So sent the pony up. I arrived there, did the clinic, and he offered me to go and sort of train with him. So I think I was 11 or 12 at the time, and then I'd take go over in my school holidays.
Incredible.
Take work with me, have a tutor over there, and then so I was doing sort of 6 months there, 6 months at home. Yeah.
Was the horse bug just always part of your DNA? Like, do you ever remember it being a conscious thing that you started loving horses and show jumping, or did you just kind of grow up with it?
No, I sort of, Mom used to do a sort of eventing and the drag hunts in Cape Town, so I was always around horses and farm life. So it's always been a thing I've done. And then I think when you're young, you sort of like anything you're relatively successful at. So I had quite moderate success in the showing and the eventing and this and that. So it was always fun.
I'm just fascinated by the idea that you were a showing rider. We just said Horse of the Year here. and someone was standing behind me and they were going, oh my God, it's like watching paint dry. This is the worst. And I actually quite like showing. But that's fascinating. And I think it's really good that you had that very rounded foundation in your youth.
Yeah, I mean, I think my very first Western Province colours were actually for showing. So I was 98 in Worcester. I think I was 10 years old or whatever. And so it was my first time to sort of get a taste of provincial competition. But I played all sports. I mean, I did a lot of skateboarding, surfing, played a bit of rugby, golf and tennis. I love all different sports.
I think you also like flying, don't you?
I love flying. That's my horses, and then my second big passion is flying. Yeah.
Which is ironic because a lot of horse people spend time flying inadvertently, just off of horses.
Well, that's why I did it, because we're traveling. Like I'm on a plane from Thursday to Sunday. I come back, and then if I have to go and try horse in Normandy or Hamburg, and it's just consistent travel. So my idea was, get my pilot's license, and if I can fly myself around Northern Europe, sort of business and pleasure together would be the dream.
Makes it a lot easier. What do you think really helped you? What was important in your competitive youth that really helped you, besides having enormous talent, which is insufferable? I'm not going to hold it against you. But what really came to your aid there? Like, what was the order? Like the support from your parents, or having access to great coaches, great ponies?
I think I was very, very lucky. I've had great ponies, great coaches. But on a young age, I mean, there's the grit and determination and really wanting it. But without your parents or that big support behind the family, it's not going to happen because, they still have to, even if you're a footballer, they have to drive you to practice. They have to buy you the equipment. They have to navigate, speaking to trainers and owners and buying horses for you because as a young kid or a teenager, I mean, you're not capable to deal with those things. So there's the business sense and the logistical side of it and then the financial side of it. So they have to sort of navigate that for you. So without that support, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So was the move to Europe always inevitable for you?
I remember my mom sitting me down. We bought a famous pony in South Africa with Walt Disney Kissimmee, and it was for a lot of money at the time. Now, when we look back on it, it looks like a bit of a joke, but at the time, it was fun. And she said to me, "Listen, now we're going to spend this money, and we have to be serious, So, you have to slow down with if we're going to do this with the rugby and the skateboarding, the BMXing is all fun. But if you get injured and this and that, so you have to focus now. And we're going to do this seriously if you want it. And I don't mind to go and support you, but then you have to want it. And absolutely, I want it. And so from there, I think was the main thing. And that's also when I slowed down with the other disciplines and sort of mainly started to focus on show jumping. And then from then on, like I said, it just kept snowballing. Once I got into Europe as a 12-year-old, I remember going to the World Cup finals in 2001 to watch. And I remember just sitting on the stand thinking, this is what I want, the public and the big jumps. And thinking, I remember the course was being built, and I thought, there's no chance horses come over these jumps, they're too big. And then, of course, they do it easily. But the bug was there, and I did a little cassette of Milton the Millionaire, so John Whittaker and Milton, and used to watch that a lot, and I just couldn't believe the crowds. And I'm a guy that thrives on, to be honest, I love horses, but I don't know if I would ride full time if I didn't have that excitement, that's what I ride sort of for the excitement of it and the pressure and the nerves, and
I think that's also having that big match temperament. I remember speaking to somebody who said they walked their first Olympic track and they went, "Oh, I can't wait to do it." And I was thinking, like, I just wanted to vomit, I thought that was awful. But I think, yes, it comes down to that ringcraft. Again, the showing title from 1998, Oliver.
Thank you, PJ. Yeah.
So where were you initially based when you moved to Europe? And I think you said you moved right out of matric.
Yeah, so I did a few years in the UK from sort of 12 up until 17. Then finish matric, I did 2 years and 1, so I finished 1 year early. Did 1 full year in the UK, and then I moved over to Germany, to Riesenbeck, when I was just turning 18. I was in Germany 9 years. I've been a bit everywhere. I've been in Belgium 2 years, and now I've been in the Netherlands for the last 6 years. Yeah.
And have you followed your trainers mostly, or have you just been looking for somewhere central?
So in the UK was my trainers. It was first with Jeff Billington and then David McPherson. Then the riding also took a bit of not a serious turn is wrong because it was already very serious. But then you realize what a business it is. It's not about training. And then I got a job. So then I started working for Ludger Beber. I'm a German rider. And then from then on, it was business. Yeah.
I mean, Ludger's just really like world-class, top-shelf stuff, right? Lexi Stace is there now, I think.
She was with Marcus and 30th beer bum. So look
Okay.
at brother and sister. Yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah.
pretty fantastic. What are the pros
Yeah.
and cons of being based in Europe? And I'm really just thinking more about the realities of it. You know, so a lot of
Yeah.
people, it's always very glamorous. You know, we're always looking at the Jilly Cooper riders version of the equestrian scene, but that's not really the reality of it a lot of the time.
Well, I mean, the glamorous side, of course, is what you see on the TV and the championships, the big crowds, the VIPs, the beautiful horses, the brilliant riding. That's amazing, and that's of course why you ride, to get that buzz and that feeling. But that's such a small minority. You know, most people will never ever achieve that or even get close to it. The reality is cold weather, very very expensive, hard work, and realizing that there's a lot of good riders, you know, and there's people that are very talented. They're going to work harder than you, and be, you know, and so that is the reality. That last bit, and I don't think you should focus on that last bit. And you know, I'm speaking to a mental coach at the moment and chatting about it, and you know, we tend to focus on the winning and the gold medals and that little pinnacle, but you know, you're going to be frustrated your whole life, and you got to sort of look at the focus. So the reality is young horses riding for very little money, staying in bad accommodation, but at the same time, it's a process, and you're building up. And hopefully, if you have a good job or a good boss, those young horses are going to get older. And one day, if you ride well and you produce them, you're going to have that chance to shine. So it's a process. And if you look at it just dreaming about the top sport, you're going to be unhappy, and it's never going to happen. So you've got to look at it as a lifestyle and really accept what it is. You know, unless you have a huge amount of money when you really kind of fast track everything, and you just go and have the best training and you buy the best horses and you can pay yourself into the best shows. Of course, that's one way of doing it. And the sport is going a lot more like that. So it's pretty close to Formula One now. So there is that track. But if you don't have the finance to do it, it is still a way, but it's very difficult.
Absolutely.
But you're going to be unhappy if you're only focusing on that last spot. You have to go, you'll come here with the expectation this is a lifestyle, and this is the lifestyle I've chosen.
Yeah,
so that's the
embrace
reality.
it.
It's an embrace. It's a, you know, you get to work, you know, when I'm tired or bored or whatever, or, you know, if you get paid for anything or something, you're always, you know, there's times when you wake up and you're bored, and I think I don't want to go to the stable today, I don't want to ride. That's normal. You know, but you have to in general love the lifestyle, because
Absolutely.
that's what it is. Yeah.
What are the best parts about being based there besides the competition? You know, like I remember Dominique coming back from when he went over for the World Cup, and he said, "Oh, do you know why those horses jump like that? Because they can." And he was just so, obviously also as a breeder, he was like so high off of that. What are some of the other highlights of being based there for you?
I guess the highlights are the pool is so big, you know, so it's even watching, there's fantastic riders who'll never even make it onto the TV or the 5-star shows, to even appreciate what they can do with horses and watch their talents. And then the pool as a breeder and as producing young horses, to watch quality young horses. And definitely I see a huge improvement in the last sort of 5 to 10 years. The quality of the horses now is out of this world.
That's
I mean, you can go to
it's
international
crazy
shows,
just seeing how constantly it improves. The dedication to breeding is so fascinating.
Phenomenal. And so the sheer size of it, and then you see the facilities now are amazing. I mean, we have Pilberg down the road, we have Centaur, which is Oblebek, you have Lear, you have a new place called Durner. I mean, those are 4 world-class facilities within an hour drive from us. And they have indoors, outdoors, VIP places, restaurants. So it's I guess it's the sheer size. The other cool thing, I mean, I guess not horse related, but we get to connect with people from all around the world.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's always
diversity.
People, and like I have diversity, and it's super cool. I have friends on the west coast of the States, the east coast. You know, one of my best mates lives in Beijing, Australia, New Zealand, and you get this really, really cool contact. So like pretty much anywhere I travel in the world or in a city, I can text somebody and say, "Hey buddy, I'm in town. Do you want to go for dinner?"
Lovely, yeah.
That's really cool. So, you know, also from a horse side, but from a cultural aspect, it's pretty nice. Yeah.
Just to go towards the coaching side of things, I'm really impressed to hear you saying that you're working with a mental coach at the moment.
Yep.
I also love, though, that you say that you just love that big atmosphere at the shows. You know, it's like you're either born for the stage or you aren't. But obviously, you've realized the value of a mental coach. Do you mind like just sharing a little bit about the value of that?
Yeah, I mean, like any person, if you're going to put, everyone gets nervous, you know, and has butterflies and anxiousness, and it's just, I guess, how we deal with it and we accept. And I think a lot of people, when I hear people, I don't get nervous, I say, I'm calling bullshit, you know. It's Of course you get nervous, you know. People feel some way or another, you have to feel it. It's just how you deal with things. And for me, it was actually the reason I was speaking to a mental coach, and I struggle a little bit with the process of putting all this work in, and then when things are not going right, I'm a bit of a bad loser.
It's good to hear it happens to the best of us. Okay.
Oh, wow. Terrible, but I'm trying to find a way to accept that, I think the win percentage is so tiny, especially with show jumping. So you're going to be essentially unhappy most of your life. So I'm trying to work on trying to be a little more happy when we don't win.
I like that. Embracing being unhappy for the large majority of your life.
Exactly.
Okay. Being unhappy in the process. I like that. I feel like horse owners and riders are unhappy a lot of the time. So that's
there's always they're lame. They're not well, someone you, and I mean, so I'm trying to. For me, that's my biggest struggle.
Okay.
And then, of course, getting nervous and accepting that that's it's a human trait. And the reason we're nervous is because we care for things. You're not getting nervous to butter your bread or something like this in the morning. It's because you don't, it's irrelevant, actually, putting the kettle on. But show jumping, you put all this work and the money, the effort, this passion and your dream for your whole life. It's normal that you're going to feel things. So if I can get
it's essential to feel things, it's ultimately what does motivate you.
Normal, and it makes things, for me, it makes things clearer. I mean, and I always look back and I think, to be anxious or why it's a weird thing, but then I love it, and it's something I thrive on. So that's what I need in life. Everyone is different. And then if I can speak to someone to help me understand this or control it better, or to help me in it, even if it's a 1 or 2%, why not? I'd be stupid not to. Yeah.
Great. No, I think we're really moving into a space in the sport where the mental health of the horses and the riders is really becoming really valued. So while you were in South Africa recently, I believe you also taught a little bit. What are some of the core principles to your training philosophy for both horses and riders, regardless of their level?
Yeah. So I think the basic, like I do say in my clinics and everything, it doesn't matter if you're riding a Grand Prix horse or a young horse, the basics are the basics. And I see time and time again, and anywhere in the world, people try and complicate training, I think, way too much. And it's actually, it's pretty simple stuff. We're sitting on an animal, we're sort of aiming at jumps. It's not, we can complicate it and talk about it as much as we want, but the basics are the basics, You need to go forward, backwards, left and right. And to have a good distance on the jump and have rhythm. So I try to implement this. And so I started from my dressage with good tempo, high tempo, so we get sort of everyone in a rhythm. And then the jumping, not too big, keep it easy, and confidence. So that's pretty much how I train.
That's great.
I try to simplify riding. Maybe, and it's how I deal with things in my head. If I even walk like a course of the World Championships, if you hear me talk or someone standing next to me, it's not, I don't even think about the numbers actually. So, I mean, when I initially walk it, maybe I say it's 6 and 7 and 5 and 4, whatever. But then in my head, I'm talking just about staying outside, staying inside, short or long. That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Oliver, I'm not saying simplicity is not the best training philosophy, but that also does sound like it's spoken by someone with a lot of innate talent. I'm just saying. Specific to high. Yeah. I remember Dominique saying, or someone saying that they were training with Gonda as well, Gonda Beatrix, and she said, "Well, can't you see a stride from here?" And they were like, "It's 8 strides away." And she was like, "Can you not see that?" They were like, "Can you?" Like, But anyway, specific to high performance. So now, like just climbing up the ladder of those like really big open classes. Is there anything that you feel is sometimes overlooked by riders when preparing for those events?
Well, I think, a lot of people have the misconception, my opinion, when you ride big classes, the speed and the tempo that people ride at. And they always get shocked if you go to Aachen or one of the big World Cups and you see the tempo of the turn because the time is so short. So I think a lot of people are not really used to that last level. And even me, if I haven't jumped a 5-star in a long time and I go to my first 5-star, not that I don't know the course and I don't know what I'm up against and I know all the riders, but it's still, you're out of it, You're a little out of it. It's so quick. The guys are taking the first distance everywhere. If you take an extra somewhere, you've got a time penalty, And then the jump offs, let's say you're clear in a World Cup or a Grand Prix, whatever it is, a big class. The jump off, you think you're fast and you're like 2, 3, 4 seconds behind the guy.
Yeah.
It's just because they're doing week in, week out. So the tempo is probably the biggest thing that's underestimated and you don't realize until you step up into that level. The horses, the time is so tight, you're riding at the jumps. If you're having to protect and hold them all the time, then you're already done.
Yeah, we actually saw that in the last derby, which of course is like a highlight of the show jumping calendar in South Africa.
Yeah.
The best and only clear round that happened in the first round landed up getting a time penalty, just because and so it's really interesting to hear that. You're absolutely right.
And that's the way has gone. The horses are quicker now. They're much lighter types. You don't see these old-fashioned builds anymore. The jumps are lighter, and the times are tighter. And that's the way they're catching them up. They can't get any bigger. I mean, the horses just do it easily. Sorry, I've got a dog rubbing my feet.
Can we see the dog?
Yeah. You can see it. It's Winston.
Oh, hello, Winston. I think I'm going to have to make this a central part to the podcast where we meet everyone's dogs.
Yeah. There he is, and that's Rick Lazarus in the background there. Resting in Spain.
Lovely. Hello.
Like I was telling
Rick and
in
Winston.
South Africa the other day. It's my weird humor. I think it's funny to name the animals with my surname.
But I mean, how else would you what to put in their passport if they were humans?
Go out tonight and call your dog. Yeah.
as long as they're not getting mail addressed to Mr. Lazarus and it causes confusion. Oliver, I believe you made some welfare efforts while you were here in South Africa, which I just really love, and I think it's really important for the sport. Would you mind telling us a little bit about those?
Well, I don't do much at all, really, but we just went there to visit the Cart Horse Association in Somerset West, and just amazing what they do, and you see the ponies there, and the number, the number of them that are there, and they cost money. People have to feed them and look after them. And that they need help, So I think if anyone wants to follow or help a cause, it's a wonderful cause for horse people.
Thanks.
And then brave people that put themselves on the line there. I mean, and they are really doing something. They're on the front line and they're doing something. I think a lot of associations, you give your money, you don't know where it goes. But there, you can go and visit them and you can go and see. And I mean, and you hear the stories about them. And now they look happy and they look relaxed and they've got a big belly.
Yeah.
And I think that's wonderful. And it's funny, like I told my groom when I came back, Michaela, and I said, in Europe, this industry is all about finance and money and winning and Grand Prix and all that crap. And it's actually not the real thing, The real thing why we all started riding is that love of the horse. And then you go there and you see people that are not doing it for any of that. They're not famous. They're just doing it for the good of the horse. So I think it's really important. It was a bit of grounding and humbleness come back here, and then you're up for it. So no, wonderful association. So if anyone wants to do something to help, it's a cool thing to follow.
Thanks. We'll drop a link to that when we share the podcast.
Yeah.
I think that's really great. Yeah. I must say, I do feel sometimes like that high-end competition feels a little bit like the Hollywood of, the world. It's
that's the thing, and the guys, like I said, it's so nearly in some ways sad. It's so superficial, There's a lot of cutthroat business, and I think sometimes this old horsemanship and the love of the horse is a little bit dying in some way. People are more for winning Grand Prix than the actual the welfare of the horse at times. So that's something we definitely, for the future of the sport and the next generation, I hope we can somehow change things and sort of head in that direction. That's why maybe my dream is to win an Olympic gold medal, but if that never happens, even if someone can say, come to my stable and say, Oliver, at least all his horses go in the field and he rides them out in the woods twice a week. And if that's all it is, my sort of weird little legacy or whatever it is, if that's all it is, then I'm happy with that, because that's what it's about. And I think a lot of top horses don't go in the fields, and this, and I'm totally against it.
Yeah. I want to talk about the things that you do to keep your horses mentally healthy, because I think then you become the equivalent of your horse's mental coach. But you touch on basically the environment of high-end competition. What are some of the issues that you feel are facing international competition? And I'm very mindful about the fact that there have been these protests and streakers and all sorts of exciting things.
Yeah.
No.
So, the high end of the sport, the horses get looked after better than anybody, I have to say that. And the love and the passion of some of the grooms, it's incredible. They're family, So the horses get the osteos, they get the physios, they get nutritionists, they get everything what you could possibly want. So that side of it is brilliant now, And the veterinary side of it, I think that side we're really up to speed with. The thing with everything in life, it's getting quicker and faster all the time, is the amount of shows, which is good because there's amount of people and our sports are growing and the numbers are just outrageous. You can go to the Sunshine Tour, you can go to Oliver, you can go to Retso. They are full, thousands of horses. Sure. And then there's still the big leagues, the World Cups, and the 2 4 stars and the 3 stars, and they're all full. So you have this huge amount of people. So we need horse shows, which is of course brilliant. But you're getting more and more of these 5 stars. There's more and more pressure because it's so expensive for riders to win, for owners, to earn money. And I think the horses, what was not in the past, you can show every single weekend throughout the year. So it's the sheer amount of competition, and the horses are just not built to jump 160 every single weekend. And I think that's possibly why we're seeing quite a lot of injuries these days, because it's just the sheer amount of jumping they have to do.
And Oliver, I'm quite interested to hear that there isn't a limitation on how often, like I know with endurance, you can only enter a certain distance within a certain time from another distance. Sinisa in South Africa, you're only allowed to do a certain amount of classes with a pony a day. Is there no limitation governing that?
No. So on the FEI show, you're allowed to do 3 classes on the weekend. That's the only sort of limiting factor. But it's also, it plays in your hands. If you want to go and jump too much and your horse gets injured, that's also a disaster. So people are not. There's a fine line of doing too much, but people are, top riders. You're not going to go and jump your horse every weekend because they're going to get injured. And they just can't sustain that level, of course not. But still, even if it's not about even a cruelty thing, but I think is definitely more competition. When the jumps are bigger and more fast. You used to be able to jump a clear in a 5-star Grand Prix or double clear and be in the top 3. Now, some of the World Cups and that there's 15, 16, 17 people clear in the first round, and then there's a big jump off, and you don't end up with any money. So I think that the level has just got on such a high standard now that the guys, you do chase them more than in the past. So it does take a lot out of the horses. I've heard things from the breeding. We've bred them to be a little weaker now. There's so much. It's so evolved into the show jump. I'm not a breeder. I don't know if that's true. I do think that also. I don't know if it's a scientific fact, but we all have this amazing ground now, all these perfect grounds, and nearly, and maybe in some way, I think a lot of people, we used to jump on grass and ride over ruts and in the woods and outrides. A lot of people don't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. They're not cross-training enough, almost, on surfaces.
No. A lot of my workouts with the horses, I try and have a varied workout. So I ride them in the woods on uneven grounds. We built a hill at home, 3 meters high, 25 meters long, for inclination work for the joints and the muscles. So I try to mix it up as much as possible. Bit of road work. It's just a bit of old horsemanship, I guess.
The old things never change. The tried and tested truths that have helped so many people. And I suppose all we can do is hope that people keep looking to the people who are leading the logs and doing exceptionally well, but consistently well, to follow their example and see how often they're jumping big. To your point, it shouldn't be every weekend.
Yeah. Guys like Peter Frederick, that's why I'm such a big fan of him, because I love that his horse is going there. All in Allen is his best horse, his Olympic champion. He lives in the field, and I think that's so cool. So, for the younger generation, it doesn't have to be, all the big, of course, nice, the big fancy stables and the bandages everywhere and this obsession, which you need, of course, because it's all the fine details. But also, at the end of the day, it's still a horse. And it doesn't matter if it's 10 million euro or €1. It doesn't matter. It's still got the same brain as the other one, and it poops and it eats, and it's a living animal. So I think that would be a really good thing if a lot of the top show jumpers get behind and sort of push in that direction of it. Because I think some people have this imagination of what top sport is, and they get a little bit lost in it.
There's a lovely American trainer called Warwick Schiller who says that we've got to learn to love horses in horse language, not in human language. We actively loving the horse with like a beautiful stable. And he's like, the horse would rather be in a field. Just leave it alone. Let it go out.
Exactly. So all these fancy things, it's nice, of course. And the blankets, we have a beautiful stable, but
makes us feel better.
The field. Exactly. And the training and the jumping and all this, but still riding them in the woods is just as good. Yeah.
What does South Africa need to pay attention to realistically develop the sports in our country?
There's a few things, because it's not that we don't have the talent. I've seen a lot of talented riders over the years. I think, first of all, we need money, we need investment. So I think looking after the owners. I haven't been competing in South Africa for a long time, so I'm sort of maybe talking out of thing here. But I think we've got to try to get behind the people that are going to put money into the sport and really try to rally around them and say, "Come on, guys, let's do this together." Because that's what it needs: finance. So without finance, how good you are. So some of the wealthy people or people that are interested to put money and get them around and try and get a team going in a funny way, like the UAE team just qualified for the Olympics, and they have one of the shakers. He supports them, and okay, that's an extreme level. It's still, you need somewhere that you need some help, So some of the guys that can never get out of South Africa, they need help. That's one thing. Looking after the owners, then I think another thing, the breeders, if they could get behind some of the riders, like top South African bred horses should be with top South African riders. I know it's a business and they need to be sold and this and that, but how cool would it be to have South African bred horses at
That
championships?
would be pretty amazing, yeah.
So I think, you go to Germany, you go to Sweden, they're really behind the riders. And that, I'm not talking like everyone's going to say, he just wanting horses. No, then give it to the guys based in South Africa, but push it and promote it, So you get that strong base, because all the strongest countries in the world, it's all where the best breeding is. Belgium, Holland,
True.
Germany,
Yeah.
France. And they're also
Driving the
best riders,
Formula
but
Ones, yeah.
only because they have the horsepower, So if we could somehow get the breeders really behind in that way, I don't know how, financially how, but that's maybe another way to do it. So getting our breeding very, very strong, which I think there's been a big push. And I've seen, over the years, it's definitely growing, some of the big guys. So that's brilliant. That's a huge push for our sport. And then the last thing is riding over here. You need, as much as people ride well in South Africa and they can get the course builders there, it's not the same. You need to be riding here on the highest level, experiencing warming up with Luger or Margazani or somebody in the warm up with you, seeing, no matter how good you are, there's a guy better than you, and we have this wonderful life in South Africa, but you come here and it's good for you, especially when you're young.
Small fish in a big pond. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good, to come here, and even if you don't like it, sacrifice 2 years, come here and groom and ride young horses and clean the boxes and struggle a bit, because it gives you this fighting, this killer instinct. And I think so for the youngsters coming out, people that really want to ride and ride on the highest level, I would say when you finish school, come over here. I'm not saying kill yourself your whole life, but give yourself a few years of hard work and try to then build something up.
If nothing
so those
else,
are my three things.
I have to tell you, local grooms respect you a lot more if you know how to muck out your own stable as well.
Of course. So I think it's that big thing, looking after the owners, there should be things in the magazines, owner of the month, making them famous too, because I'm not being horrible. Someone to put a lot of money in, do they want to come and sit in a chair and eat a burger, or they should be looked after, they should be VIPs on the shows. And again, maybe they haven't been for a long time, and and I'm sure they have improved. So when I see here in Europe, some of the owners are looked after like gods, and they should be, because it's a lot of money.
Absolutely. And the breeders need to get the recognition.
The breeders, there should be sports breeders. They should be, and then that they get a big push for it, and proud that also riding with the best South African riders on the best shows in the world. That's pretty cool.
It's marketing as well, It's
marketing. It's good, and that's definitely, the breeding is a massive thing, because when you have that structure, and then you have numbers, and you have a real platform underneath, and we don't have to go and buy horses in Europe and buy them for millions and millions. There's numbers. It's a numbers game. And then the third thing, getting the youth over to Europe and getting stuck in, whether it's America, Europe, it doesn't matter, but coming over and experiencing huge numbers and people you've never seen before riding better than you.
Yeah, quite humbling, I'm sure. Won't you tell us a little bit about who your not necessarily your top horses, but your most exciting horses are? And I know you mentioned an Olympic gold in your future. Would love to hear what your other aspirations are for them.
So I have a small team of horses. We just purchased 3 young horses at the moment that I think are really exciting. One little mare, I don't know if she's the last Grand Prix level, but a wonderful 150 horse. 2 others, Carlos and I call him Tim. Those are the stable names.
Okay.
Tim's Augmenteros Z, but we call him Tim.
Okay.
So Tim and Carlos, they're very exciting. They're young, they're 6-year-olds, but they're definitely something for the future. They have everything what I like in horse intelligence. I ride generally a sharp blood horse best. I struggle with a cold horse. So they're both sensitive, sharp animals. I've got a very, very nice 9-year-old from Shokomola stables. That's something very special. Super, super hot at the moment, so it's like a rocket's been let off. So I don't have all the control, but he's got all the scope, and he's a really interesting guy. I think he's something. If I could try to get this spot for next year in Paris, he could be something that maybe could be aimed towards Paris. He's something very, very special. And then I have the 2 older ones, I Farnell, and then Butterfly, who I rode at the games, who's been my best horse over the last couple of years now. And we're still looking at the moment to try to purchase one more to help her this year with the global. Yeah.
And is that like I remember Sean Henderson also went overseas, and he said you need quite a string, to keep your eye on and to give you the presence at shows and things.
That's 6 horses on my string,
okay,
and that's a very, very small number for a professional rider. Yeah, so it's very, very small. So over the next 6 months to 1 year, we'll add 1 or 2 onto that.
Okay.
So I'm looking at around 8 would be a perfect number. Yeah.
Is Tim's surname also Lazarus, or is that just for the dogs?
No,
Okay, just checking. I was trying to suss out who the favorite animals are.
You got to laugh at something. You come in the morning, it's cold. You got to have a laugh.
Yeah, exactly. What are some of the factors? I mean, we have spoken about stresses and everything that you need to consider to achieve these goals. And we've spoken a little bit about personal mindset and motivation. Your own fitness as an athlete, and then sponsors and keeping your horses sound. Like, I mean, this is quite a holistic plan that you need to stay on top of.
Oh, jeez. So you're like I always say, right? You're like a CEO. So you're running your
that's
company,
great.
and there's so many different aspects. So that goes down to our vet. He's a Swiss vet. He's the Swiss team vet. Mark Odley, very good friend of mine. I mean, he's here once a week. We have our blacksmiths, Paul. We have our osteos and physios. We have our food companies. It's all these little aspects, come to play. That's the sort of basic running of it. Me as a fitness, I run every day. I love running. It's a way I deal with even not the physical, it's a mental thing for me too. So on the championship, if I'm feeling nervous or I've had a bad day, I go for a run. It helps me clear my head. And then physically, I love eating and drinking. So I don't believe in
So you
diet.
have to run. Okay.
Yeah, so I love running. For me, I refuse to diet. So I'm 6'1" and I need to stay light. So for me, running is the easiest way to do it.
Okay.
Then I kickbox once a week. And that's more of because I'm the stiffest man alive. So it's try to get me flexing and stretching. Eating wise, I try to live a pretty healthy lifestyle. I could be a vegetarian. I mean, my wife is obsessed with meat and steak and things, so it's not allowed. But I love eggs, avocado, a lot of salads, quinoa. I wake up in the morning. I have normally oats and sort of things like this, lunches, open sandwiches, and then some very healthy stuff now. We'll throw in a little chocolate bar in the night.
That's not
the odd
bad at
McDonald's
all.
or pizza.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. That took a sharp turn.
No, there's always a little thing on the side, but in general, try to be healthy,
Yeah.
because you want to play on that last level. We put all this money and all this effort in, and then, like I said, it's these little aspects. So if it would make a fool of me if we spend all this money, hard work, people putting effort in, and I'm too overweight, or I'm eating unhealthy and drinking too much and partying, not there. When you're young, and I remember starting on the big shows, I used to go wild and party before the Grand Prix, and then you wake up feeling terrible.
I'm sure Penny's not listening to this. Penny, switch off the YouTube channel.
So she knows. And then you get older, and it's just not possible anymore,
I remember Lutke Beerbaum speaking about the difference that having 2 kilos less on his body made to his horses. And
huge. Like if I go kilo up, I don't feel good at all when I'm riding. I can feel it straight away.
Sure.
And it's not that I'm obsessive, but I just know as soon as I put a little bit of weight on it, I don't feel good. That's why I run and I try to kickbox and stay active. And then to be fit in body and mind. And that's why I have the mental coach now, and I'm trying to do all these little pieces. And maybe they don't help, but maybe they do. Yeah.
If you think they help, they do. So
Exactly.
I know for someone who says that it's less about the bandages and more about keeping things simple and good training principles, but everyone always loves to know, like, what are some of your favorite pieces of tack or equestrian must-haves?
Yeah. I keep it very simple. I ride only with the same bits. So I love gags. So I guess that's the must-have in my tack.
Okay.
My tack box. Gags go everywhere, So I ride everything also with 2 reins, so a lot of reins. I hate riding with 1 rein. What are the must-haves? I love my Renaissance saddle.
Oh, okay. That's good. I don't think that's a brand we have in South Africa.
It comes under Prestige.
Oh, okay.
But it's the guy Frederick Butte sort of made them under the Prestige banner, so they're called Renaissance. So they're hard. They're still French. They're beautiful and soft, but they're the hard wearing of the Prestige. So I like them very much. I'm not embarrassed to say, but I was one of these guys that never wore a helmet. Never. Jumped young horses, did everything. And I have pictures of me. I think it was even 2010, 2011, even on international shows, no helmet. Then the helmet thing came in. And then a couple of years ago, I started wearing a helmet. No, I never get on a horse without a helmet. Bought my wife an airbag for Christmas. And I thought, this looks like turtles, We bought these young horses, and I got on one of them, and they were super naughty one day. And I thought, I'm too old for this shit.
You went to put the airbag on.
I ride with an
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. And you've got a little daughter now, so you actually it would be selfish not to.
So I don't do it at home, but when I jump, the young horses, I always put it on, and then on the shows, I wear it. Yeah.
So
I guess that's the airbag.
That's good. I like it. So you spoke a little bit about the woods and the turnout for your horses. Is this what you do to keep your horses, happy athletes?
Yeah. So I believe, there's always the argument, of course, a good horse is a good horse and a good rider is a good rider. So it sounds as terrible as if you don't put them in the field, they're still going to jump. But I don't believe in that, I still believe if you have my horses, my family, they're my friends. I still, if I go and do a night check, whatever, I go and hang out in the stable. And maybe after work, I'll go and lay in front of the barn with them and just let them sniff me. So I like to have that connection. Some riders are different. If you have a massive stable, you can't have that connection. But I believe that's a huge part of it. So they're my friends. Then secondly, all the horses go in the paddocks because they're horses, and I think there is definitely studies that show that a horse in the field is much sounder horse than one in the stable. They're moving the whole time. They're getting active. Their gut's working because they're eating grass. So I love it that they're out. So it's not only physical but also mental. And then in the work, very, very varied work. Like even in the winter, I get embarrassed if I ride a few days in the indoor too much. And I think the poor thing has been indoors. It's gone on the walker. It's in the stable.
Yeah.
So I try to get out as much as possible, even if it's cold. So it's in the woods. We have a gallop track. I go on the gallop track. We have a hill. I work on the hill. Bit of road work. So just a lot of varied stuff.
That's really
physically.
Good. Yeah.
Yep.
The FEI has launched this Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission, which is aimed at basically trying to suss out, how good the industry is for horses. And it's just interesting. One of their basic things that they're recommending for horses is just turnout time. They said something everyone could do today that would really improve the quality of life and the physical soundness, to your point, of their horses.
No, absolutely. It makes sense. If we sit in the stable the whole day and then you get on and you ride them intensely for an hour, you're setting yourself up for disaster, and then standing for another 22 hours in the box. It doesn't make sense,
What is your favorite show or event, and why?
I was thinking about, I don't know. Indoors, it would probably have to be Gothenburg.
Nice.
I think just Swedish crowd are insane, and when you're warming up and you hear the stadium pumping. It's like top high-end sport. And that was last weekend, so it's a very, very cool one. Outdoors are difficult. I think anywhere. I've never, unfortunately, rode Aachen, but I still I've been around this my whole life, and I still get excited to drive to Aachen.
Yeah.
And you park and it's pumping and the atmosphere is going, and it's just another world. I go home motivated and excited. So I'd say I've never ridden Aachen, but definitely Aachen must be the show of them. And then championship, because that's the experience I do have. Not necessarily one show, but championships at Olympics or World Championships. That is the ultimate thing. To arrive there and all the flags are going, the stables are full, and the more you sort of progress through the days, it goes more quiet and more quiet. And then when you get to the individual final, it's just the top 25 or 30 people in the whole world. All the barns are empty, and it's just something that you can't describe. And that's electric. That's the best shows in the world.
Yeah. You talk about that big atmosphere, and then I always laugh when we come to a little dressage show in South Africa, and we're shouting at people for opening a knick-knack packet too loudly. So yes, I think to your point, we've got to get overseas and realize what goes into it. But
it's all relative. You can get nervous for a dressage test on a young horse, because I watched a really cool interview in a documentary with a guy called Alex Hammond, a free climber, and they were talking about, again, nerves and pressures and fears. And for someone to look at El Capitano, he free climbs with no ropes, and they said that looks for me like a nightmare, the biggest fear in the world. And for him, he said, it looks something beautiful. It's the unknown.
Yeah.
You don't know what it is, So for someone that does dressage all the time and in a big stadium to go to a small ring, of course, it's not scary because it's known.
Lovely.
But for someone that's doing a young horse or a bit excited, doesn't ride professionally, and there's a few people watching, this is the unknown. Maybe the horse, I don't know if the horse is going to misbehave or the packet's going to open, and this is what you fear. So it's the unknown you fear. Yeah. It's the experience.
Yeah, and be kind to yourself. So I need to ask you about the most disastrous show that you've had.
There's so many.
Well, I was particularly having a good laugh with your mother, Penny, earlier on, who says, I have to ask you about when you forgot your course when you were working for Lutke.
She says so, and unfortunately there's so many times, but that was a shocker. I was Dortmund.
Was that the night after one of your parties?
Yeah, I tell you, she's a disaster. I missed the last jump in the Grand Prix,
Oh no.
and went through what I thought was the finish, and I was clear, and the people whistling and crying, and I looked up on the board, and the time was still going. There's like a screen in the middle of the ring. That makes sense. And I thought, shit, I missed the finish. So I did like a circle, went through what I thought was the finish line again, and they were still whistling, and the clock was going. I thought, doesn't make sense. I retired because I thought this is just a disaster. Came out, and I missed the last jump. There was another rider that did exactly the same thing after me, was sitting in the chute. It made me feel a little bit better. But I remember sitting in the stables, and someone pulled my hoodie, and I was a little bit, so I turned around and said, I'm so sorry, I'm embarrassed you in the stables. And he said, well, you're going to be hard enough on yourself, and we've all done it,
That's great.
So it was super bad, but it is what it is. So he was walking away, and I thought, look, have you ever done that before? They said, yeah, of course I have. Not in front of 12,000 people, but I have done it.
Okay, so you felt properly good about yourself after that.
Yeah, little one on the side. But I guess, it's not funny at all, but probably the worst show was, to be honest, what disappointing was the World Championship last year. The mare jumped very good the first round, and then the first round of the Nations Cup, she just didn't have it in her. And so for me, that was probably one of the lowest in my career. In experience-wise, I take a step back and I look back on it, and I can be a horseman and understand why. But in that moment, it's hard to control yourself and to understand. You take forward. I bought her as a 6-year-old, so it's a whole life of work to build up for that, and it doesn't go to plan. And that's where we talk about, winning that gold medal, but maybe respecting the process and actually seeing I got her as a young horse and produced all the way up to there. So the process has been amazing. And last year she did 3 5-star Grand Prix and was placed in 2 of them. So the process was amazing, but unfortunately the last bit was not. But we're going to learn and we'll get better.
And then Penny said I should also mention that you guys broke down on the ring road of Madrid in rush hour traffic with, she said, the horrible old green truck.
Yeah, but we're here. I don't know. I wasn't there. I was with my new girlfriend.
No, was that your mother by herself?
Yeah, of course. Someone has to work.
I love that. Okay, that was good.
No, I left her. We saved her eventually. Gave her a few hours there to struggle. The gearbox fell through, so we had to tow it off the ring road, and the truck lived there for about 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh wow! Yeah. Okay, no one in Madrid complained about it.
No, not actually. No, we took it off the ring road. It was on a farm, but
okay.
For a while.
Yeah, no. In South Africa, we would just leave it on the side of the road. So
Of course.
Is there anything else you want to add, Oliver? We haven't got any questions for you. Surprisingly, in the chat.
Again, it's just that, like I said, if I can leave anything, there's a right way to do things, and it doesn't mean I'm not ambitious and that I don't want to win everything, and I do, and I'm the most ambitious person in the world. We've got this card game at the moment, 5 crowns, and if I'm not winning, I'm foul, and I don't like to play it. So I'm like highly ambitious in everything I do and competitive, but there is still a right way to do things, Yeah. And I think if we can respect horses, and it's not about not working hard or being tough with them, man. If give them a smack, that is that. There's strong love, but still going in the field, it's all these little things, respecting them as being living beings and friends. They're not just there to work. And so if we can have a few of these things, I think if anyone younger and older generations are listening to this and they're trying to change things, you'd be surprised the performance you can get into it. So I think if anything, please, try to be more, have a little more empathy and love towards them.
I like that. That's really great. What's your next show coming up?
Well, the plan has been a little bit messy. We did a lever in January, and then I was supposed to go to Doha with the global team.
Wow.
But we had to, rightfully so, Butterfly needed a break after the World Games. So John and Marcus have had a great World Cup season. So Jan Tops has decided that they should go to Doha, which is absolutely the right decision. So then I thought, what do I do? I haven't jumped in the World Cups indoors, and I've sort of been waiting for Doha. So Jan said, then I wait at home in February, and then I go down to a lever in March. But we've had a big outbreak of the equine horse virus, so it's been a bit of a disaster. They've cancelled a lot of the tours, so I've cancelled that. And there's not much else. We have Den Bosch next week, and then Paris 2 5-stars, but it's a bit too late for me to get into that. So I'm going to do Herning. There's a 3-star next weekend in Denmark, actually where the World Games were, but indoors. So I'm going to go up there, and then I'll come back, do a few of young horse national shows in the area, and then Miami, Mexico. start of the global leagues.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's quite a
Yeah.
trip. How do the horses do with that
Yeah.
flight? It's
They
bad enough
fly
for
really
people.
well, to be honest. Yeah, they fly really well. Actually easier than driving, so they're used to it. I mean, they live in transport, so they'll hop on. I don't know whether they fly to Schiphol or Liège. And I think they fly into Miami. It's 1 day quarantine, and then onto the show. They're on the beach,
Yes, that's
and then they'll
outstanding.
finish. Yeah, I don't know when. I think we finish Saturday's the Grand Prix. Sundays there's a big jump off class, and then they'll fly. I guess Sunday night straight to Mexico City.
When next
Yeah.
are you going to be in South Africa?
It's a good question.
Your mother
every
asked me
year
to
I'm
ask you
coming-
that.
She asked me that. Yeah, cool. Definitely again this year. It wasn't going to come out now last week, and I just thought the season's heating up. I haven't been home in 2.5 years, and I just want to touch base and be at home and have no plans, and that's what I did. Just ate and had fun and hang around my friends, and it was perfect. It gave me a real kick and a real lift. So sometime this year, towards the end of the year. Yeah.
It's your equivalent of going out in the paddock for a few hours, I think.
My little
There we
paddock,
go.
exactly.
Okay.
Little buck. Yeah.
Oliver, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us tonight. It's really so lovely to be able to connect and just touch base with someone who's really living the dream. I know you don't always maybe feel like that, but I think it's really good for people to hear that and get that perspective. And we're so looking forward to supporting you. Oh, sorry, we've got a late entry for the questions. Just before you go, someone wants to know what your typical show warm up would look like. I suppose
Show
it
warm-up,
depends
so
largely on
I
the
would-
horse.
Largely on the horse, but it's quite the actual technical side of it. But the system is very much the same. So we'll ride them in the morning. Normally the bigger classes are in the evening or in the late afternoon. So you will exercise in the morning. I'll sit on them around half an hour, and it's like an athlete. I treat my horses just like a pro athlete. So I read a lot of sports books, and because I find it interesting what they do. So it's much the same. So in the morning would be a stretch, not intense cardio work, but it's sort of a stretch and loosening the muscles. So it's a half an hour, a lot of walk, bit of lateral movement, bit of light trotting canter, and just getting them out. Then around 45 minutes before my start number, depending on where I'm going and what type of class it is, I'll get on, try to do as much walk as possible, light trot, light canter, just to make sure everything is working. So a bit of counter canter, just the little details that the horse is listening to my aids, a little bit of forward, backwards, and you're not going to fix anything. It's too close. So it's just the little fine details. Then depending on the horse, I mean, some horses need a big warm-up, big jumps. Other horses, very little, But generally, I'm a rider that doesn't jump very big. At home, I never jump bigger than sort of 135, 140 max.
Oh.
And the warm-up is quite the same. It's even if I go into the 5-star Grand Prix, I'll jump maybe up to 140, small 145, and then a very tall vertical to go in. But it's very easy. Like I said, you're not going to fix anything. The work has all been done at home. And my way of mentally dealing with things is that I've done the work at home. And now
Absolutely.
it's just about warming the muscles up. Yeah. So it's actually very easy, keeping it easy and simple.
Yeah, I love that. Also a case of you can't really be doing grade 10 at home and then arrive to write your matric exam. You have to be doing the matric work at home before you get there.
That's it. So we have everything. It's all about.
I love that you say you're not going to fix it at the show. And I think that's a really
that's-
important thing. You see people often trying to fix something, and it's too late. It's great.
It's late. And then also mentally, you're not there when you go in the ring. You should be at a peace and a flow with the animal. And if you're there worried about this and it's not working, it's probably not going to work.
That's lovely. Thank you. The floor is officially closed for questions. Oliver, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. We're really looking forward to tracking the year ahead that you have, and hopefully on to next year, looking towards Paris. Thank you again for your time, and lots of good luck.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us tonight at the South African Equestrian Federation podcast from the horse's mouth. My name is Georgie Roberts. I've been your host, and we're looking forward to seeing you again next week, Wednesdays at 7 o'clock.